if you mention The Shining, one of the, things that people always say, oh yes, the bike going over the rug and the floor and the rug and the floor, and they think about those iconic kind of shots and atmospheres that Stanley created, or they talk about when Jack went mad, They very rarely give the credit that Shelley was due and is due for what she did in that film. She was quite aware that she was being put through the mill. She understood that. I mean, she didn't always feel good about it, and why would she? It was a constant pressure for 6 months, from the moment that we filmed the first kind of moment when she was feeling uncertain and she understood something was seriously wrong, which probably was, when Danny wanders in with all those bruises on his neck after Jack's had his nightmare, From that point on, she had to pitch it at such a highly charged emotional level. And how do you do that on a day-by-day basis without going totally mad for a period of 6 months? I mean, so Stanley kind of seized on that, and it wasn't particularly attractive or feel good in any way, He was quite aware of what he was doing, but, he felt the need to do it. And Shelley understood that. She said, I think she says in the documentary, I know it's a means to an end, but, and it wasn't a pleasant experience for her whatsoever. So that's a really good kind of illustration. And I would give you another one that contrasts even further from Jack and Shelley, would be Scatman, who, was a man who could remember every word of every song he'd ever sung since the 30s, but sometimes found it difficult to remember, 5 lines of dialogue, in a take. And so, there's this, I think in the Guinness Book of Records or some film kind of, funny things that happen in films, there's this reference to how many takes he did on set in the kitchen with Danny, for instance, or inside, the food stores where he has to list off all these, everything he's got and how many of it. Like 35 bags of this and 25 bags of that and 15 this and 14 that, which were difficult things for any actor to remember in a real constant flow, without a break or a hesitation. And so I was Scatman's dialogue coach, and what we understood was that maybe for the first or second or third takes, he'd be okay. I mean, not what Stanley wanted in emotional reach, but the dialogue was there. But the longer you went on, the more uncertain Scatman would get. He was getting on. He was, 68 years old, when we filmed those scenes. And, and he then sometimes, sadly, his confidence would go simply because Stanley was asking him to keep it going and repeat it and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. But to his credit, and fantastic, you see, he did. He went with that. So Stanley was incredibly patient with him. Never, very softly spoken, very gently guiding him and telling him, no, you do it again, it's not quite right. Do it again, it's not quite right. And what you get in that scene between Danny and Scatman at the kitchen table is you're looking at Scatman as if he's one of the most accomplished screen actors of all time. It's so beautifully orchestrated and so wonderfully pitched that it just comes out so beautifully,
Yeah.
So, so that was every one of those actors, and Danny was another one where, he'd come on so prepared because, I videoed all our rehearsals, and Stanley said, get him a little more like this or a little more like that, or I don't like what you're doing with him here, or I like what you're doing with him there. So Danny was prepared, and so Stanley could be very patient with him, and very soft and gentle with him. So you're absolutely right. The way he dealt with each actor was absolutely different from how he dealt with another one.